Did we tell you so? We told you so. All of you nerds losing it in the comments of, oh, the stretch, oh, there's no third spec, there's no legendary. Oh my god, we have the third spec for Evoker, and it is Augmentation. What? Augmentor? That name sounds silly. That's not what it is. How many I told you so's do you need to realize that we know what we're talking about? Sometimes, not always, but this is one of those times, and it's fully testable on the PTR. You can hop right now in 10.1.5. Evoker's getting a third spec, DPS spec, augmentation, and it's going to buff your allies. It's awesome. But first, if you like the video that we make, this type of videos on the fly with all the cool info, with the I told you so's when it matters, when it's all on point, then consider checking our Patreon link down in the description. It supports the channel, it helps us grow, it makes it so that we can do even more of these videos that you like, and there might be some in for you, you know what I mean? If you check it out, there must be some goodies, and we would love you for it. Thank you very much. Let's check the augmentation. Now, obviously, this is the first inception of the spec. The numbers are very, very subject to tuning, so don't, get your hopes up too much, because some of the numbers look pretty crazy. I'm not necessarily talking about the damage. So what is this new Augmentation Evoker? With the brief amount of time that we've had to actually test it on the PTR, there's a couple of really cool things going on. First of all, the main theme is black spells with bronze spells. So, we get that. We get the cool new black spells. The first style that you will start with is most likely going to be the cornerstone of the spec from what we've been able to test, and that is Ebon Might. This will essentially be a 30-second cooldown spell that you have to manually cast, and it buffs 4 nearby allies, increasing their primary stat by 10% of your own, and causes your eruption to deal 20% more damage for 10 seconds. This affects only 4 of your nearby allies. Obviously, this is very catered to a party style playstyle. It won't extend to raids. However, I can definitely see the value of having more than one augmentation evoker in your group, but this is how you're going to do. And right now, the 10% extra main stat is really big, and this style of buffing goes further into the spec as well, where you buff people based on a percentage of your stats, which is really great because this definitely addresses the potential issue of, you being the augmentation in your group and people not giving you gear because you're just gonna be there to buff and it doesn't matter how much gear you have. Well, it does. So it definitely promotes you maybe being even the first person to get gear and eye level. Let's say we're talking about a raid progression with your guild, and if you are the augmentation evoker in your guild, you might want to get the first upgrades out of everybody else, because then you'll be buffing everybody else by even more damage, since most of your stuff is definitely going to scale off of your main stats. Now, 10% seems quite a bit right now in terms of PTR. With my current evoker on the PTR, that's about 1400 main stat. 1400 main stat. That's like 3 or 4 trinkets put together. That is a lot of main stats. So that's what I mean, that the numbers will probably change as we go further on. Now, if you've been playing Evoker in any capacity, you'll recognize, essences and empowered spells that you have to cast with different style levels. I'm not going to go into like what Evoker is. We have a lot of videos on our channel, so I'm just going to go probably some of the differences between augmentation and, let's say, the other Evoker spells, or what you probably can expect between this and Devastation. The next ability that you're definitely going to like is Eruption. This will, from what we know so far, it will replace Disintegrate, so you will no longer have Disintegrate, but this also does AoE damage. So what it does so far costs 3 essence. It's a 2.5 second cast. It's not an empowered spell. And it causes a violent eruption beneath an enemy's feet, dealing a lot of volcanic damage split between them and nearby enemies. It can be augmented, pun intended, even further, but this just does damage. Now, if you do take its augmentation, which is actually called augmentation, increase the duration of your Ebon Might effects by 1 second. So let's say you pop your Ebon Might, because that's probably what you're going to start with, and buff everybody up. You're going to use an eruption and extend that buff, and there are a couple of other things that will extend Ebon Might, which is why I believe that Ebon Might is going to be the crux, the crucial cornerstone of your spec, and just giving them way more main stat, which just translates into more damage. But that's not all the things that you're going to be doing. You, of course, get your own specific empowered spell called Upheaval, and boy, this looks dope, dude. What this does is gather earthen power beneath your enemy's feet and send them hurling upwards. dealing a lot of damage, and it does damage AoE to nearby targets as well. And as you empower it, the radius is increased. Look at this. Look at how it looks, man. The animation is... Jesus, if you thought Shaman had Earth world-breaking animations, dude, this looks dope, man. And the radius increase is actually really cool, because then obviously if you're fighting single target or boss fights, you only need it at one charge, right? And of course, if you augment it further, it will extend Ebon Might effects by 3 seconds. Obviously, this is also really good. And this kind of probably starts to paint a picture of what you're going to be playing like, where you're probably going to maintain as high of an uptime on Ebon Might as possible to give everybody as much damage. And healing, obviously, because this will also go on healing, although it will prioritize. By the way, I didn't mention this before, and I don't know if this is going to change, but most of your empowerments, if not all of them, do prioritize DPSers. So I'm sorry, healers, if you wanted that boost in main stat, you might be able to get it, but you'll probably have to be close. So you could probably use some positioning mechanics where if you're in range out of your melee and one of the melee DPSer is not that close to you, you might be able to, you know, buff your healer instead. But it is what it is, and since it's 4 nearby allies and you don't usually have 4 DPSers in one party of 5 people, then obviously your healers will probably get the buff as well, unless you want to give it to your tank, in which case, I don't know if this positioning will be that important, because, you know, you're gonna want to be putting it on everybody else, and of course it will go on you as well, since you are considered as a DPS player, since these mechanics can also be used to buff yourself. Obviously, since they're mostly AoE, you're not just gonna, you know, work towards buffing yourself. But if you thought that you're just gonna do noodle damage, at least in concept and in this design, that's not how it's going to be. You're not gonna be doing noodle damage, you're gonna be buffing yourself, but likely, I mean, I would expect your overall personal performance will not be as high as the other players, because then everybody's just gonna run like a full party of augmentations, because then they're just gonna buff themselves to crazy amounts. Although I do see, which is not stated so far, but I do see buffs only working from one evoker at a time. So I don't think we can stack Ebon Mights multiple times. So having 2 augmentations in your party will probably do little to nothing. It will just probably make sure that everybody's buffed. Instead of 4 people, you'll have 5 people. If that's worth it, then, you know, there is an underlying issue with all of this stuff where balance is going to be very, very, very crucial, because of course you have to be able to deal damage on your own. Let's say you're doing world content and stuff, right? You cannot just have all of your performance, all of your output outsourced to other people. You have to be able to, you know, handle your own. But if your damage is, let's say, I don't know, you have 3 DPSers and you're just doing just as much as a BM Hunter, then why ever get a BM Hunter when you can just get more augmentation? That's the concept. So ideally, in an ideal world, augmentation is probably going to do less damage than every other DPSer in the game personally. But similar to Priest's Power Infusion, the amount of power you provide to your group will definitely or at least it should, in theory, outscale this. Now, there's a lot more stuff that we can go into. You're not just buffing your DPSs. If you thought about it, you can also buff your tank, but, you know, yourself as well with Blistering Scales. It's another ability. It's a 30-second ability. It's still the 25-yard range, because evokers, what are you gonna do? And what this does is protects an ally with 15 explosive dragon scales, increasing their armor by 30% of your own. Once again, the more armor you have, the better this ability becomes. Melee attacks against the target causes 1 scale to explode, dealing a little bit of volcanic damage. Now, obviously, the number will be tuned to enemies near them. This damage can only occur once every few seconds. They didn't specifically said how many seconds, but I'm probably sure that they're gonna play around with the scale of, okay, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds to see exactly where the balance fits the best. And then blistering scales can only be placed on 1 target at a time. Clearly, this is intended to be a tank. Let's think of Mythic Plus, right? You're going to Mythic Plus, your Guardian Druid, because Guardian Druid needs some love. You place this on the Guardian Druid and it blows up, dealing damage. Now, what we don't know yet is this damage transferred to you as, you know, is this the damage that you do, or is this the damage that the tank does? Where does the threat go? Do you get this threat from the damage that the blistering scales do, or does the tank go? Because this can definitely help, for instance, tanks that struggle with pulling a pack, and especially building threat like Blood Decays or Guardian Druids. They don't have instant burst snap thread like Cake Smash that Brewmaster has, or, you know, Thunderclap that Warrior has, right? But if this transfers threat to the tank, that's great. If the damage is also for the tank, well, I guess it's whatever. Listen, the damage is still your party's damage, right? So it's all good. And of course, this can be placed on you as well. If you do world count on your own, you can, increase your own armor by 30% and explode in AoE. So I guess this is probably as close as you can be as feeling a tank of your own. We wanted the Evoker tank, man. We wanted the Dragon tank, but I guess this is as close as you can be as a tank yourself. Now, there's another cool mechanic that I wanted to point out, and that's the Draconic Attunements. This is really cool because initially when you look at it, what this says, this is just basically a ability. Well, it's not an ability, it's a passive that it gives you two abilities, and we'll talk about it in a second. So it learns to attune yourself to the essence of the black or bronze dragon flight. The black attunement, you and your 4 nearby allies have 5% increased maximum health, passively, which is good, 5% increased health. Bronze attunement makes it so that you and your 4 nearby allies have 10% increased movement speed. Now, baseline, these are stances, or auras that you want, if you want to, like paladins, right? You swap in between the two of them, either black or either bronze, depending on what you want. Now, there are also further talents that make it even better, where, for instance, the Aspect's Favor, which is the talent just beneath it, makes it so that Obsidian Scales activates Black Attunement and amplifies it to increase maximum health by 12.5% for 12 seconds. Obviously, goes higher to 25% if you put 2 points in, and of course, the numbers will always be subject to change. Hover also does this by activating Bronze Attunement and amplifies it to increase movement speed by, well, 25% right now, but it's likely gonna go higher on the PTR. The talent tree that we've been able to access to said 40%. This seems like it's gonna go to 50%. So I'm not sure. The numbers, the numbers are not that important. The effect is probably what's important. So every time you press your hover, and we know as Evoker mains that you get your hover pretty often, then everybody else is going to get, well, not everybody, but 4 of your nearby allies are gonna get a sprint for 4 seconds, which is really, really, really cool. I don't know how this translates into a raid setting. I can clearly see the value of it. We already know the value of one Evoker in a raid as a former Preservation main. The value of stuff like Zephyr, of Rescue, of Time Spiral, and all of that is pretty good. Now, add all of this on top of what Augmentation will bring. You'll definitely want an Augmentation in every raid. This is a pretty much guaranteed raid spot, which is probably where some of the controversial parts begin. And this is something that we'll probably have to explore going forward into the 10.1.5 patch when this spec is going to hit, as to how will this help with balancing and group composition. Because first of all, you do have the balancing. That's probably going to be an issue at the start. We can expect in 10.1.5 when this becomes available to in the live game, for the balance to not be quite there. And I think that's fine. I think that's something that we should be prepared for. This is definitely a new spec. It's a very different take on a new spec. And if we're gonna have really cool stuff like this, then we have to be prepared for stuff to not be quite there. And with this, a little parenthesis, devs, you guys are amazing for doing this. Middle of a patch, you're bringing in a spec, cheeky Ian, saying that we won't have anything in 10.1. Well, 10.1.5 is not technically 10.1, lawyer speak, but it is still part of the same season, and I personally thought this was going to be in 10.2 at the earliest, but listen, I'll take it. It's good. So now, there's obviously going to be some balancing issues. We're still going to have the forever talk of like, oh, but why should you bring my Feral when Boomkin brings that, or why should I bring my Devastation if Augmentation does that? So yeah, this is part of the game, and it is what it is. So hopefully the balance will be struck in such a way where people can still play what they have fun and not feel like they're pushed out of a group because we need a different other spec. So I'm not sure if the devs are watching this. I'm pretty sure that they're aware of the issue, but I'm hoping that this will eventually be tuned in a way where people won't feel like they either have to play Augmentation or that they cannot play their spec because their group needs an Augmentation over them, because this can feel pretty bad. Because right now, I'm not gonna go into all the talents. You can go on the PTR and test them yourself, because we can be here all day. But all the talents that Augmentation has are nuts, man. And just by the first inception of it, the first initial iteration of it, it feels like, dude, I just want a raid full of these guys. Listen, I don't care if the buffs are gonna get wasted on other people. It is nuts, dude. It is really cool. And this is probably the bar that most people wanted. Sure, it doesn't sing or do anything like that, but you are going to buff your allies. And if the numbers were going to be tuned in a way where it's not silly nerfed, the buffs will matter and your presence will be felt. And when you have a Distro Warlock doing 80k overall DPS, and then with an augmentation in their group, they're gonna do 120k. They're gonna say, listen, dude, we want you in all the time. But what do you think? Is this what's finally going to get people into Evokers? Are you going to main an Evoker with this spec? Because it is looking dope. And I've been on the PTR a little bit, and I cannot play live right now. I just want to play this all day. It is looking pretty gnarly. Let us know what you think. And of course, if you want to support the channel and you like what you're seeing and want to see more of these videos, check our Patreon platform. It is linked down in the description. Thank you, patrons, for supporting the content. We love you guys. You make a lot of this possible. We couldn't do it without you. Love you guys, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.